First thing in the Orthosphere today. Buck Johnson and Slade discuss intrusive thoughts, New Age, and becoming Orthodox.
Yeah. Violence was the thing, right? When you're in, it's like, okay, we respond with violence to everything because that's how you overwhelm a threat or an enemy. And, you know, I was never like physically violent with my family or anything, but just always on edge, ready to snap like that. And I would yell a lot. And like that didn't stop just because I stopped drinking, right? Like I still had that. And I would also have like those thoughts of, well, you keep hurting your family because you're just so on edge and mean. I'd like be driving my vehicle and I would just have like these whispers of, oh, maybe if you just drove your truck off the bridge, you would be saving your family. Or if you just drove into that tree. And I was just like, I didn't want to die. I didn't want to kill myself, but it was just like these persistent thoughts that were just, you know, it's spiritual warfare, but I had no way to combat that. And I didn't know what it was at the time. And it was no way to live. Like it was actually like, I can't even explain how terrible it was, you know?
You tapped into something and I didn't know this was totally out of the ordinary, is having thoughts of something awful happening to you, a form of, you say PTS, I was saying PTSD, is that a form of that? Because I have that on a fairly regular basis. Not like it's suicidal ideation, not at all. So people listening, if something ever happens and they say that's what I did not do that. But like,
I mean, I think we struggle with it our whole lives. I think the devil never stops telling us men to freaking end it, bro. But the name of the game is don't listen. The name of the game is don't listen, bro. You know, I talk about don't kill yourself. I put it in t-shirts. I put it in songs because the devil's main goal is to get you to end your own life. That's like a full-on win for him. And in this day and age, with the war of attrition that's going on in the psyche of every white male, it's not an easy, it's an easy fight to lose. And so you need to be grounded in orthodoxy. You need to be grounded in the church. And you need to recognize that all that is suggestions of the demons and treat it as such and never give in to that. I don't think there's many people walking these days, except maybe those with incredible prayer lives and people who've been in the church for a long time. You know, people who, you know, because me, I swing back. You know, I go to church and I usually follow my prayer rule pretty well, but then I'll start. By the end of the week, I'm chopped, bro. By the end of the week, I'm chopped. By Friday, yo, I'm done skis. Luckily, last week I had a vigil on Thursday. But usually by the end of the week, I'm done, bro. There's nothing left of me. I'm just a mess. And so I need to re-up, you know, I need to get back. I need to confess. I need to take the Eucharist because this is a spiritual battle before it's anything else that we're all dealing with here. And those who do not have the tools which are given to you by the church, which has dealt with the same spiritual battles for thousands of years now, those who don't have those, they fall into all sorts of deception. You know, whether it is, I mean, you can just look out at the world. Look out at the world. Look at what people are doing to themselves. Look at the ideologies and cults and the myriad lies that people are giving into. Anything, the drugs, the promiscuous lifestyles. All of this is a way of distracting from this underlying thought that you're not good enough without any release valve. Because the fact of the matter is we are not good enough. It's baked into the cake. We're not good enough. But the grace of God extends to us, and by it we will be saved if we rely on Christ. You know? And so you need that. You know, sometimes it feels like the Eucharist is a reminder that Christ loves me. You know, it feels like it's a reminder. That's why I said earlier, it's a small miracle every time I make it to the cup. It's like Christ saying, I'm still with you. And I'm like, but listen to what I've done. Look at what I've done. Look at who I am. Look at what every day I sin endlessly, you know? And it's like God saying, I'm still here with you. I still love you. And I still want you, you know? And that goes a long way to keeping me going in a world which wants me to die, in a world which wants me to be killed. And I think those tools are foundational for a good life. And so avail yourself of them. If you're not Orthodox, become Orthodox. Plain and simple.
I don't know. Of course, you get on a plane. I think everyone thinks about that. I will be talking on the phone to someone while I'm driving. And I've said many times, like, would you imagine if an 18-wheeler hit me head on while we were talking on the phone? And I have known that regular people are like, why would you think something like that? And it's like, I don't know, because it comes through my mind on a fairly regular basis. Is that a PTSD thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. You know, and I would also like have like graphic images of my mind of like my kids being killed in front of me and me not being able to do something about it. You know, things like that. I think we're a part of that. And again, I just think it's demons at this point, and like that's what that.
Cross yourself and say the Jesus prayer.
That's what you know, the church fathers have taught us, and yeah, a lot of that stuff has. And
that opens up the world. You know, and I've talked about this always on my show, is understanding thoughts that come from within and thoughts that come from without. You know, the devil is constantly throwing fiery darts at you. The demons are constantly whispering suggestions into your ears, hoping something will take seed. I've talked about this a lot. I've talked about this with Light of Tabor on his channel, is, you know, you can spend your entire life, the trajectory of your entire life could be a seed that a demon planted, you know, and you need to have the tools to recognize and discern when something isn't coming from within, it's coming from without. It's an attack of the demons, and it's not your own thought. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. Kundun or 7 Years in Tibet, one of those movies, I forget which. This is just a story that means nothing, but it just always struck me. I saw it when I was a kid, and the Dalai Lama, as a child, had a vision of Tibet being overrun by Chinese and them killing everyone, forcing children to kill their own mothers, and all sorts of psychotic, disgusting, evil stuff. And he woke up and he said that this is going to happen. And somebody said to him, are you sure it wasn't just a bad dream? And he said, my mind couldn't conceive of something like that. It couldn't have been me. And I always thought about that. There was something about that that really struck me. You know, you're made in the image of God. You're not really meant to conceive of disorder, chaos, and evil. These things come at us through suggestions of the fallen angels. And the thing about us is our minds are fertile ground. If you've learned anything from living in this generation, it should be that our minds are fertile ground, that people can implant them with anything. You know, they can implant them with a mantra from a song that dictates an entire year of your life, or a lie from a Protestant that dictates your entire idea of who God is and leads you astray for a lifetime, or makes you someone who worships the false state of Israel and is essentially trying to bring about the Antichrist. Your mind is fertile ground. It has to be protected. You protect it through prayer. You protect it through crossing yourself and saying the Jesus prayer. And as you move further through life, you start to have discernment, and you start to recognize that these things are coming from without more and more. and you start to realize what it is you're protecting from, or what it is that you're protecting. You're protecting this beautiful, precious thing in you, which is the image of God. You're protecting a beautiful thing which is untainted by the suggestions of the demons and the darkness of the fallen world. And the more you identify with that, the clearer it becomes when something's coming from without. When something's coming from, the demons. Because you no longer identify with the world. You identify with the eternal kingdom of God. You identify with the image of God which you are made in. And so it becomes very clear when something's coming from outside of you. So we got another thing here.
And I go in and I'm like hiding in the narthex and it's quiet. I'm like, okay, none of these people look like me. That's okay, And there's another inquirer there too. And he was like in the narthex with me, and I'm like trying to just kind of like tuck in, and then it begins, and I immediately started crying. I was like, well, okay, that's weird. And then Father Joshua starts to sense, and he walks out, and then he doesn't even remember this, which is hilarious, but he's like this big older dude, long white hair, long white beard, and he's sensing, and he walks by me and he like puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, hey, I'm so glad you're here. And then continues sensing, and I cry even harder. And it's just like, I can't explain it. It was otherworldly, like the priests with the choir's response, the Lord have mercy. Yeah. And I was like, there's angels, angels are real. Demons are real. These angels are definitely real. And I did nothing but cry, like the whole liturgy. But
that's crazy. That's what happened to me the first time I went to liturgy. First time I went to liturgy, all I did was cry. I sat in the back of the church and I sobbed. And I had visions of what I didn't understand at the time. I know I've talked about it before, but it's worth bringing up in this moment. I had visions, which I now understand what they were, but I didn't understand at the time. I was crying and I was praying silently in the back. No one was looking at me. I was in my own world. But I kept seeing visions of these bowls being passed from one person to another, up until I couldn't see anymore in this elaborate dance. And I learned later on it was the saints carrying my prayers to heaven. I understood it later on as the saints carrying my prayers to heaven in these bowls that they would pass up in these crazy elaborate things from one saint to another, until it was beyond my sight. I didn't understand what I was seeing. I had no understanding of orthodoxy. I just knew that it was the holiest place I'd ever been in my entire life. I think what makes you cry, what makes a lot of people cry the first time they go to liturgy, because this happens to a lot of people, is here's what I think makes you cry. You didn't think there was holiness in this world. And all of a sudden you see holiness. Because I've been on the earth for 30 some odd years at that point. And I'd gone to the churches and I'd gone to, other countries, and I'd gone to the temples, and I looked everywhere, and some part of me at a certain point gave up on ever finding holiness in this world. And I think when you walk into divine liturgy, the experience that you are now in Eden, you are now in you're now in the Garden of Eden. You are now experiencing holiness. It hits you like a freight train. Because for many of us, we'd given up on it. We'd given up thinking that it existed. And I think that's what brings you to tears, is the fact that all of a sudden, what did the what did the soldiers who came back to the Prince of Kiev say? I think it was the Prince of Kiev, when he was looking for a faith for his people. They went to the Catholic Church or whatever. No, not the Catholic Church. That was before that. They went to all these different places. They went to and all these different religions, and they said, you know, it was cool and all. But then they went to an Orthodox liturgy, and they said they didn't know if they were in heaven or on earth. They couldn't tell. This was the report that they brought back to their king. We couldn't tell if we were in heaven or on earth. It's a profound experience when you first go to Divine Liturgy. I think that's why so many people end up crying.
Immediately started crying. I was like, well, okay, that's weird. And then Father Joshua starts to sense, and he walks out, and then he doesn't even remember this, which is, it's hilarious, but he's like this big, older dude, long white hair, long white beard, and he's sensing, and he walks by me, and he like puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, hey, I'm so glad you're here. And then continues sensing, and I cry even harder. And it's just like, I can't explain it. It was otherworldly, like the priests with the choir's response, the Lord have mercy. Yeah. And I was like, there's angels, angels are real. Demons are real. These angels are definitely real. And I did nothing but cry, like the whole liturgy. But I had no idea what was going on. It didn't matter. I was like, this is true. This is real. And then afterwards, I actually stuck around, went down for trapeza, and some of the guys were talking to me. And Father Joshua comes up, and he's like, hey, how's it going? Yeah, he's like, you visiting? And I'm like, no, we live here, but I just wanted to check it out. And he's like, oh, you're the scout, huh? Because I told him I had a wife and kids. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And as I'm driving home, I called my wife, and she's like, so how was it? And I was like, will you and the boys please come with me next week? And she said, like, pause for a second. She goes, yes, we will. And she told me, she's like, you never ask anything of me. So I could tell that this was something, that you really wanted. And so we all showed up the next weekend, and it was game over from there. Like, we just haven't stopped. And she cried nonstop. I mean, she cried almost like the whole year while we're there. It took me, like, I cried most liturgies for like the first 6 months easily. Like, I just couldn't. It was just hitting me in a way that nothing ever did. And yeah, I was like, there's no way I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, I still sometimes cry at liturgy. Me, I had an experience recently where I became overwhelmed by all the duties that I took on personally in church, and I became burnt out and was no longer able to experience anything. I started to worry what was going on with me. I talked to my priest, and he said, this is a very important time. He said, keep going to church, keep your prayer rule. I forget what he called it, but he said it is a very important time in a Orthodox Christian's life where they become I don't know, something like exhausted, but they continue forward. And that this is a very formative and important part of a Christian's life. And I love my priest so much, and I trust him. And so I've kind of cut out a lot of my duties that I had for the church. I used to be a reader. I used to be on the council. I used to be in the choir. I used to do all sorts of stuff. And now I'm just going to church again. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to liturgy going to vigil and just being there. And it's been a really wonderful, wonderful experience for me. And it's helped me immensely. I don't know how long this is going to last. I don't know when I'll be able to, you know, take up all these other things again. But I'm grateful for the grace I was afforded in just being like, look, I can't do this anymore. I can't. Instead of being like attacked or told that it's my duty or something like that, I was just like given grace and shown, you know, just given grace and guidance. And so now I'm moving forward, and it's I don't know, it's a new chapter in my life personally.